Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Red Star One on One. I am just besides myself excited for today's show um, because, first, I will admit that I have with me somebody who looks like, just from your setup, bro, it looks like you're a real deal Twitch streamer. One of my best friends in the entire world is joining us today, Marco Ortega. What's up, man?
Hey man, thanks for having me. Dude. One of the things that when you talked to me about doing this, I was like, yeah, man, I'd love to be on it because one of the things that I enjoy doing is just watching a bunch of YouTubers and stuff and
Right,
how they do their setups. And I was like, well, I'll give a crack. I'll give it a crack and just see if I can set up,
right.
because I have a bunch of lights and stuff like that. So
But you're in the
I
biz,
thought I'd go
though.
all out, man.
You're in the biz. You do like production professionally, video production and things of that.
Yeah, yeah,
As you can see, I
yeah.
literally bought a webcam that I'm looking at and I plugged it into my computer and I'm in my office. But like, I mean, I feel like there should be like a lower third, right? And like somebody
Yeah.
donated. This person donated on your screen. It's like I'm literally watching a Twitch stream because you're a handsome Latin man, and then you've got like it's all purposeful. It's like all red on the left and blue, you know what I mean? It just you're lit. It looks fantastic. I'm super
Yeah.
jealous.
Yeah, it took me the better part of a couple hours, so I don't envy the YouTubers. I'm sure they have a studio already set up, but I don't envy them if they're always having to set up in their home,
Sure.
because I mean, it took me a while.
Right. Well,
So,
so first off, thank you for having us on the show, and
never.
for the Red Star crew. I broke the rules today. Normally, with these one-on-one interviews, I like to interview a member of Red Star Gaming Group, which Marco is a group based in San Antonio, Texas. Got like 700 members on Facebook, and they basically tabletop enthusiasts. A lot of us love things like Warhammer, Lord of the Rings, Dungeons and Dragons, Marvel Crisis Core. There's all these basically games that involve you painting these minis and you rolling dice and getting together and hang out. And there's multiple stores across the city. And what I've done normally is that, especially during the pandemic, a lot of people haven't been playing, but I would invite people on just because I liked doing it, and then we'd get to know a little bit of people. So if you're new, you could hopefully have seen an interview that I had with somebody, and you already had that ice broken. You're like, oh man, this dude loves freaking Sea Island Shrimp House, which you do, and I asked that, and I mentioned Sea Island in
Yeah.
every interview I do. Um, but hopefully, to be able to break the ice, like so. But you are not a member of Red Star, which I declare you a member of Red Star, even though you have never voted,
Honorary.
yeah,
Thank
honorary
you.
member. But I thought it was cool that we talk on the reg, and like we'll just talk about movies, fandom, Marvel, Mandalorian, Star Wars, and all this stuff. We'll rant and we'll rave, and then the next thing I know, like it's been like my wife's been like, "You've been gone for like 50 minutes outside talking to Marco. What were you talking about?" I was like, "Oh, we're talking about the Snyder Cut." And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I've always been like, you know what? I got to get these conversations on camera. So this is what we want to do today. I want to talk about the Snyder Cut. I want to talk about movies. I want to talk about the fandom and stuff like that. And I wanted to do it with one of my best friends. Um, so let's get started, brother. Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
No, no, no. Go ahead.
Did you? So you watched the Snyder Cut? Give me your initial like reactions to it.
Yeah, so immediately, because it was so long and I was one of those that just I did not sit through the entire thing. I actually chopped it up because honestly, I really, really wanted to kind of see the differences between the two because when I first, man, I, I'm probably one of the very few people that enjoyed um,
Justice League.
Suicide
Oh,
Squad,
okay.
Justice
Yeah.
League, Superman. I've always enjoyed a lot of the Snyder films.
Or the universe.
I
Yeah.
think, yeah, and I think he's telling things differently. I think you and I have both talked about that. How some people are just telling things differently, and they're interpreting it their own way. But I was one of those that I was like, okay, he had a version of it. A lot of things happened in his life that took a turn for the worse, so he obviously had to take a pause. And then the studio and Whedon just decided to do something completely different. And I really wanted to compare the two. I really wanted to
Sure.
see the differences in storytelling. I wanted to see the differences of vision, and I really wanted to see what Snyder had envisioned for it from the very beginning. Um, and I'm pretty sure he thought about it a long time. I mean, he obviously had a long time between when he paused and then when he picked it back up. Um, but yeah, I mean, I had to chop it up, and I think I watched it over the course of like 3 days or something like that. But um, I think there were some things that I wonder if he initially thought about having it, and if things worked out the first time around, I wonder if he still would have had those things happen.
Hmm.
Like I don't think he would have had. Obviously, I don't think he would have had Jared Leto in the original Justice League. I don't think
Right.
he would have had that scene. Um,
I
and so I just wonder like how that all would have played out, and if those things hadn't happened in his life where he had to, um, actually do his cut the
the
very
first
first
time.
time.
Well, I think
Yeah.
that the weird thing about this movie is like I think the consensus is mixed. But so there's this weird phenomenon that happens with his run with the DC expanded universe, as it were. It's like this. It's like shrouded in this mythos of what if, why he chose this thing, and then the fact that the Snyder cut is a thing that even exists. It makes this whole thing so fascinating because this is not like anything we've ever experienced. You get your shot, and then you move on and take it or leave it. This is what it was, and then here comes just I guess during the pandemic, stream HBO wanted some big stuff to help with the get people on Max, and they gave him like 70 mil to finish this bad boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course there's this drama. There's like this drama behind his cut, Whedon's cut. Um, but I think that what you were saying earlier is it would be interesting to find out what he want. I think this is what he wanted theatrically, but it's obviously not feasible. I mean, you'd lose money. You would lose every other show in ticket sales if you release a 4-hour movie. I mean, I think the mandate from Warner Brothers was you got to make this 2 hours, and you have to add some levity to it to Joss, which is his humor, put some humor in it, and they're two totally different movies.
Yeah, and I wonder if even if he did want to do the, let's say if he did do the first version, I wonder if he still would have done it 4 hours and just divided it into two movies.
Right, which
You
is
know,
which is right would have been the smart thing to do.
you have, when I think Marvel had already intended to do, two movies for Infinity War.
Right.
So, I mean, and Endgame. So, I mean, I think it would have made sense for him to have done something like that. But at the same time, it's like we'll never know because obviously everything that had happened and so much. So I'd probably say how many movies came out in between that first Justice League and then
Right.
that film. I mean, you have, I
Uh,
think it was
yeah, you would have Shazam. You
Suicide
had
Squad.
Suicide Squad. You had um, Shazam, Suicide Squad,
Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman. One the
Was it
second.
84?
Yeah, Wonder Woman '84, which was terrible.
Yeah, it
Um,
was awful.
and Aquaman.
Yeah, and then I want to say, was it?
I think. I mean, somebody can Google us, and they probably will. But
Yeah, I mean, I can look it up, but anyways, but yeah, man. I mean, I think you and I both have talked about how if you're looking at, was Whedon's cut bad? Okay, I don't
okay,
think it
yes,
was awful. I don't
right,
think it
right,
was awful.
100%, 100%.
But but people trashed it. I mean, people trashed Justice League. Obviously, I did not like Aquaman. Aquaman was, to me, it just was not very good, and I didn't like 84. Wonder Woman 84. And so going back and you're seeing DC just doesn't have a very good track record, and I
Right.
don't understand why. I think you're onto something that you and I have both talked about. Like, people are reinventing these movies and they're reinventing these characters, and the thing about it is that the characters and why Marvel films are so successful is because they're not reinventing the characters.
Right.
They're
Uh,
they're
mhm.
keeping the characters who they are, and people recognize who they are, and they've attached themselves to who they are, Captain America, Iron Man. But when you reinvent, Superman to become a very emo guy, I mean, it's like, what are you trying to do? Superman was never a dark character,
I
you
think
know?
yeah, and so this it's this is why this is so fascinating because this uh universe that I think I know that James Gunn has a Suicide Squad movie coming out, and I know that they want to do a Black Adam, and they've got these other plans. But for all intents and purposes, in the Flash movie, but for all intents and purposes, the DC cinematic universe as we know it is over. And the tragedy here is that this is going to define these superheroes for like a generation of young people, uh, for good or bad. And I would say
Yeah.
bad, and I think a majority of people would say bad. So what you were just saying, we talk about all the time, and it's these they hired uh, they hired Zack Snyder to give his interpretation of this and to plant the seeds for the future movies. This is the universe. This is the world building, and what he did is created this extraordinarily depressing and dour, very nihilistic look at this world in which these people have to operate in.
Yeah.
The whole thing is it's absurd, and it should be absurd because these are people that are put it on costumes. This is an alien that came down, from Krypton and crash landed. It was raised by all American parents with good morals, and there's all this absurdity. But instead of going, this is a comic book, and you don't necessarily need levity, but it needs to be grounded. Like, hey, we know this is a comic book. You know this is a comic book. Instead, it was with like these people struggling with identity or this. I don't know. He just didn't. He set the stage in a very negative light, and frankly, it's like this is it's scary, and if you don't have a PG, Batman, Superman, these kids have these things on their lunch pails, man. My point is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
right, the Marvel movies, the MCU, you can have lunch boxes and your kids taken from it. The Batman and the goddamn Superman that were on Batman versus Superman, which I think is the worst offender of all of the of all of the whole thing,
It's so
were
funny. I like
scary.
those too.
Were scary. But they're scary. They're
Yeah.
you know what I mean. So it was almost as though they picked the wrong guy to give his interpretation. And I've always found it arrogant when a director goes, I really wanted I have the opportunity to take these things that frankly belong to pop culture at large and to really
Hmm.
make my own, deconstruct them and I want to give my own take on it. You know what I mean? And it's like there are some things that are too big for your own take. I think that's extraordinarily arrogant and that's why Marvel is successful and DC is, for all intents and purposes, a mixed bag slash a mess.
You know, what's really funny is that I think people are getting into this trend of taking something that's old or old fashioned or out of date, and they're trying to find they're trying to find things that weren't there, and they're trying to develop their own narrative to it. And I think that was the thing with Superman, is that they wanted to make him, this more humanistic, in touch with his feelings, struggling to find his identity.
Right.
Because
That's
if
the
you
big
watch
one.
the
Yeah.
old Supermans, if you watch the old Supermans, he just kind of accepted his way. He was always kind of giddy and, like, I'm I mean, that was obviously him playing his character as Clark Kent was always kind of
Like
like
a
a
dork.
little goofy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was very carefree, and then when he was, Superman, he was very confident and he still had humor. I think there was a ton of levity in the old Supermans and stuff like that. And he was always a lovable character. I think, Christopher Reeve was an amazing Superman, but obviously there's this very dark tone of just the struggle of his own identity and who he is and trying to find his parents. And you kind of have that in the old films, but in this one it really takes a deeper dive. I mean, obviously everything that he did in this film, from the actual color tone of the film,
Right.
and then you have the musical tone of the score. Obviously the way that he dressed, his suits were darker, a little bit darker than the bright red and the bright blue, but everything was just different. And I think everybody's trying to do that now. They're trying to reinvent it a little bit, and I think when you do that, you do run a risk because people have expectations, and when they see it, they're just like, "What is going on? That's not what I signed up for. It's not what I was expecting." And then when you see things like, you know, Captain America, and you see Iron Man, and some of those films weren't all that great. I didn't like Iron Man 2. It was kind of just almost like I felt like it was just kind of like oh, by the way, let's just make another movie with real no point to it. And Iron Man 3 was kind of that way too. But I felt like the consistency of who Tony Stark was always there.
Right.
You know, at least his character was consistent.
Right.
And the same with, Steve Rogers and Thor.
Well, I think
Although
Steve Rogers
Thor,
is was I think just the best because I'll let you finish your thought, please. But I do want to talk about Captain America as a juxtaposition to Superman.
yeah. So you have somebody like here's and the exception to the rule, and I don't know if this is even an exception, Mike, but we can all agree that Taika Waititi's film of
Right.
Thor,
Right.
Ragnarok was amazing. Kenneth Branagh did a great job with Thor, but you can tell that the differences between the two characters in Thor 1 and 2, to Taika Waititi's
Yeah.
interpretation of
Yes. It's
of
totally
Thor,
reinvented. Yes.
it was completely different, and
It's very weird to go back
way
and
more
watch the first
humor,
one. Yeah.
way more humor. And again, I feel like there's an evolution with Thor a bit
Hmm.
because you're also talking about a mix of Guardians of the Galaxy in there somewhere. But at the same time, I'm just kind of like, how come his interpretation of Thor was very acceptable compared to somebody else who's trying to make Justice League, and it was darker, and I don't know.
Well, I
That to me
think
was
the
a bit
yeah.
of a question.
I understand what you're saying, but I think when you have like in the DC movies, it's hard to elicit anything. It's hard to elicit from those movies. I mean, joy, frankly. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But the Kenneth Branagh's movie was still like they had that, and Branagh, of course, is famous for his Shakespeare, right? Um, but but it was almost like okay, so here's this magical world of Asgard, but like the Thor, the way that the Asgardians talked, the way they operated, it still had that Shakespearean delivery vibe, the way they talked, and of course Chris
Hmm.
Hemsworth's evolution to where he's a little bit more confident, and then where they just add he's just hilarious. And I think that was where they were like, man, we've got an actor that actually his comedic timing is phenomenal, right? And then they let him
Yeah.
run with it. But the entire tone of Ragnarok was a joy. So it didn't the 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 disharmony between that the you know what I mean wasn't so striking as it is in DC, where it's sad.
Hmm.
I want to just real quick, Marvel's um, Marvel's Captain America from start to finish is probably my favorite example of why these get it right, because uh, it's beautiful if you think about it. I love he's my favorite, but I cannot watch Endgame. I cannot watch Endgame, and not it sounds so stupid. It sounds stupid, but it's not, because we're all nerds. But every time when Captain America gets jacked up by Thanos and his shield is broken, and he stands up and then he straps in his shield, and everybody's down for the count, and Thanos has
Yeah.
teleported his
Yeah.
army, and it's Steve Rogers facing down the entire army, and I'm
Hmm.
like, they get it, like they get it, this they get it, and then you go back and the beauty of it is you go back and you watch the first Avenger, and then you have the skinny Steve Rogers jumping on that grenade. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's like
Hmm.
the bookends of his journey, like in the movies, is Chef's Kiss, right? And it deserves all of the praise. And then you go to Superman, the other Boy Scout, DC's Boy Scout, the original Boy Scout,
Yeah.
and they didn't the world that they created didn't have a bastion of hope or a benchmark of morality. You know what I mean? Of this bastion of everything that we could strive to be. Superman is like he's the very best of us, the very best of
Yeah.
what we can be. And instead, his dad gives him a complex where he gets chastised for saving these children from drowning, and is putting this doubt in his head. And then when he can, as an adult, save his dad from this tornado, and Pa Kent is like, "Don't do this." You're giving this guy like that, like this. I remember like,
Yeah.
what are you doing to this poor guy, right?
Yeah.
You give I don't understand that. I don't understand that because the argument was in comic book circles, the argument is, who is Superman? Is he Clark Kent or is he Kal El? And you ask it 100 times, you're going to get 100 different answers. People on both sides of the fence. I've always been like, well, he's he's was raised, if an ultimate being of unstoppable power comes down to Earth and is raised by anybody else, we don't get Superman. But the Kents were so pure and so
Hmm.
good that they installed all of this in him in his formative years. You know what I mean? That created
Yeah.
this person who also happens to be the most powerful being in the world. And and we instead of getting this, like the freaking it makes me, doesn't make me angry. It's frustrating of the missed opportunity, especially because I love Henry Cavill, but I just, you watch Man of Steel and they give this poor kid a complex versus installing him. They almost fumble out of the gate, and it's frustrating, man. It's unfortunate because this is what we
Yeah.
get. He should have had a moment like Captain America where everybody's like, "That's him, that's my guy," and he Henry Cavill never gets that. He never gets that.
So do you remember that one? Was it? I think it was like Superman Returns with
Brandon Routh,
Brandon Routh,
yeah,
and I think it was it Bryan Singer
yeah, Brian Singer
that did
made
that movie.
yeah,
And it was Kevin Spacey as Lex
mm-hmm.
Luthor, and so you're the tone of that one. It was also it was lighter. I felt like, I don't know if they were trying to redo how the old 80s 90s Superman was,
Right,
but I had that feeling, but it's a different tone altogether
right.
compared to Snyder's cut, or Snyder's vision of Superman. I do, however, I have to say this. I don't. Did you enjoy? uh, it was the beginning of Man of Steel, and you're on Krypton, and you're kind of seeing the war go down.
Right. I did like. I thought that was cool.
I thought that was
There
because
were
you
so
don't
many cool
ever see
things.
that.
Yes, you don't ever see
Yeah,
that. There was a lot of
yeah,
cool things to his credit. I just think his fundamental fumbling of the characters themselves, uh, and the tone. You know what I mean? I'll be honest with you too. Like I'm inferring these things, and it was with I did this with Star Wars too, which we'll talk about later. But you watch the Snyder cut, and you can't help but watch that without it being implied like he's doing this, right? To
yeah,
Joss,
yeah,
to Warner Brothers,
yeah,
to the people who think he fumbled the tone, because he doubles down on this shit. He he
yeah,
his he did the reshoots to incorporate Leto's Joker and Batman so that they could finally, because during this entire run, which is unbelievable, we never had a Joker and Batman together scene, right,
right,
where they faced off. So he gave us that, but he did it in this like, oh, this is where I was going. You know, I was gonna do it. I was gonna take it into this post-apocalyptic world, and he does it as
yeah,
a cliffhanger, knowing very well nothing's ever gonna. To me, that read like he was like a big middle finger. To be perfectly frank, I thought that entire end scene was horrifying, and I'm glad that he's not getting a chance to. I think his damage is done, and he certainly delivered some cool moments. You know what I mean? To his credit, but he's will be remembered for a wasted opportunity overall, which is unfortunate. He did give us, he did give us one of the most badass moments in all of DC films is the Batman warehouse scene. It's Batman vs Superman was
yeah,
dope. That was dope.
yeah. And I'm not gonna lie to you, man. Like, these reinventings of Batman. I think I don't know why DC has allowed this. I mean, obviously it's always about money, and so whatever. Um, but how dark can someone get?
Yeah, I just yeah.
I just feel like the further we go, it's just gonna go darker and darker. While you have, Marvel and Disney just saying, we cracked the formula.
Exactly. Well, they
We
have a
know what we're
formula.
doing.
They
Yeah.
so I think I remember years ago I was like, what's really cool about DC is that Disney's on this formula, but DC's letting the filmmakers be the filmmakers. Uh, they're not saying that this is a formula. David Ayers, do your thing. He made it all gang, like it was like kind of gangsta, right? And that was his thing. He was like, right, um, including his interpretation of like club owner Joker, essentially.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah, pretty much. And then who the director of Shazam, do your thing. Patty Jenkins's first or I'm sorry, Wonder Woman, which was amazing.
Yeah.
Do your thing. They each could do their thing, but the overall arch that brought them together was given to the wrong guy. Pretty much. He had he didn't like the material. Why do you accept the movie if you don't like the material? Um, One of the Todd Phillips said, and this I don't have the quote in front of me, but he's like, listen, he was like, the only way you can get 100 mil plus to make a movie is to make a superhero movie. He doesn't care about the mythos. He doesn't care about DC. He
Right.
didn't give a shit about. He wanted to make, Taxi Driver. I'm sorry, the comedian, right? He wanted to give his take on the comedian. He's like, okay, so if I gotta put Joker, makeup on this guy, and then call the city Batman and have it loosely made a comic book movie, it's one thing. That movie has nothing to do with anything. It's not a comic book movie,
No.
but he
No. I
used to his he was smart to I'll use this comic book craze so I can make this movie that I want to make, and then loosely make a comic book movie. You don't. That's my point is that don't make a movie if you don't like the source material, if you don't appreciate it. Don't do it.
Did you like Joker?
No, I thought it was. You know what it reminded me of? Do you remember that movie Crash with
Yeah.
all of those actors? Do you remember the theme of that movie was racism? Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Was it subtle in the movie's theme, or did it beat you over the head and like it thinks I'm an idiot? Right?
Yeah.
I
I
felt like that was with Joker. Like I get it. Like he's had a shit life. Society's
Yeah.
crap down his. Like we get it, man. Like
Mental illness.
right.
Yeah.
We get it. There's no subtlety. It just beats you over the head. You know what I mean. There was no we get it. I get it. And it was I remember I felt like Crash. I'm like, are you serious? Like I get it. This movie's about racism.
So I always ask myself, I know motivation for a lot of these studios is always going to be it's always going to be money on some level. Um, but you have a guy like Kevin Feige, and then you have folks like um, uh, oh gosh, uh, he's been producing the Star Wars stuff. What Favreau?
Oh yeah,
um,
Favreau.
you know, yeah, and you have guys that are very passionate about the content. They're very passionate about the storytelling. They're very passionate about the overall vision and the consistency of the vision. And so I just feel like every single time I'm watching a DC film, I feel like it's like a, it's somebody else has taken DC, stolen it, and made their own thing.
Yeah.
It's like it's all broken up. There's no overall umbrella of branding.
Right.
Aside from I'm taking this character. Like I thought Shazam was very interesting. I thought it was good too, but it didn't feel like a DC film.
Right.
And I also thought that Wonder Woman didn't really feel like a DC film. When I was watching, I was like, this is not a DC film. When I watched Suicide Squad, I did, however, feel like that was a DC film.
Yeah, but it still had that
But
same
yeah,
shot at
so
night, dark, depressed. These are bad guys.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then that's why I'm kind of like, you know, even when you're watching, when you watched Spider-Man: Homecoming, when you're watching, the first Black Panther. I mean, those guys, I'm assuming that at any moment when they were like, "Hey, we're gonna make a movie that's gonna be in the MCU," everybody that had any kind of overall responsibility on the vision of it, they were all in that room, and they were all saying, "We're gonna make sure that it looks consistent to everything that we've done, so when people see it, they're like, yeah, that belongs in the MCU." That belongs in that whole, like even Captain Marvel. Like, look, I was just very amazed at even from the color palettes that they used in the films. Um, I felt like the costumes and the settings, it all had a consistent look to it, and it made sense. And I feel like, man, you can't. DC doesn't do that. Like I just don't feel like DC
Yeah.
does that very well.
It,
And even when I'm
yeah.
watching like the TV ones, when you were like, "Hey, you need to watch Titans." Again, man, Titans was just like a bunch of just really pissed off,
Kids.
depressed,
Yeah.
upset kids,
Yeah.
drunk kids.
But I don't know why. Actually, I do. So my theory, we've talked about this. I haven't been able to. People, if anybody watches this ever, they're gonna say that I'm taking a piss. But I blame Christopher Nolan. So popular movies and great movies, not Batman movies. Christopher Nolan's trilogy, while good, are crime dramas. I don't. He set the standard for. To me, he's like, this is stupid, right? Like just the idea of the Cape Crusader is stupid.
Yeah.
And he straddled the line where he did it, and it wasn't insulting. You know what I mean? But I certainly don't think that. Frankly, it's not a celebration of Batman. And what you were just saying earlier of the Marvel movies, each one of these is a celebration of these characters. You know what I mean? Um, you say you don't like Iron Man 2, but like the intro the intro of the Tony Stark Expo where he jumps out
Hmm.
at the back of the
Right.
plane and he's coming down and the fireworks and stuff. And it's like, this is a
Yeah.
celebration of, not just because it's a celebration literally, but like, this is Iron Man. This is a great scene. Everything about him is, you know what I mean?
Sure,
He's
sure.
cocky.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
it's beautiful. And then the deposition in Congress
That was
had
great.
that levity. The great Justin Hammer, played by the great Sam Rock. The whole thing, it just
Yeah.
screamed Marvel, and it just like it's a celebration this of this uplifting, funny. I'm watching it and I'm smiling, but they didn't have a anyways. They didn't have a showrunner. Is the DC, and which is,
Yeah.
I think that's what we can take. The takeaway is, you need somebody that's there from ideation to go, this is the tone, like to write the Bible. Here's the tone that we're setting. Here's, you know what I mean? Here's the characters. The, um, the ethics of the characters will be such as this. You know what I mean? We want to introduce them to look like this, and at the end, we need them to look like this. And whether that's the same, it either reinforces who they are or there's some sort of journey. I don't know, but they don't have that, and I kind of wish they would just shut it down and restart.
Yeah. You and I talk a lot about, just how um, the storytelling part about, like, okay, for example, you obviously, the gaming group that you're a part of.
Yeah, Red Star. Yeah,
There is the biggest element of it, if not the element of it, is storytelling. And I think the part that really draws me in, because here's one thing that Christopher Nolan did good, but again, when I'm watching it, I'm not watching a DC movie. I just, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
it didn't resonate. I felt like I was watching a Christopher Nolan movie.
right. Yeah,
If you watch any of his
Inception.
older movies, yeah, even from if you go from Memento to Insomnia, to The Prestige and Inception, and you're watching these movies and you're just like, this is a Christopher Nolan universe.
Yeah, yeah,
That's what it felt like to me. Um, but I think, when you guys are when you're developing a storyline, and let's say you're playing, a series of games week in and week out, there has to be consistency in the narrative. There has to be consistency in the characters. I just feel like they're missing something within how they're developing their characters, and then how they're envisioning their characters and bringing them to life, and they're kind of just like running rampant, like they're a bunch of kids just like, we'll take it, and it's just, whatever comes out of it because the guy has a big name or whatever. I just feel like the storytelling, it's missing something there. um I've always been a big believer that without a story, everything else is just not going to fall into place. You can have the best costumes and the best settings and the best cinematographers, but if you don't have a really good story, you're not going to engage people.
right.
You're going to lose them immediately. And that's why I thought, you know, the overall arch of, even when okay, we talk about Star Wars a lot, and I hate to shift here, but we talk a lot about Star Wars, and it's like, dude, out of all the new Star Wars films, and we're not even talking about Mandalorian here, but out of all the new Star Wars, the only one that we really, really enjoyed that was just a blast to watch was Rogue One.
Rogue One. Yeah.
Like, we sit there and we're just like, why didn't they follow this?
Hmm.
It wasn't hard for them. It's like, yes, they took an element that was within that universe, obviously before The New Hope, and it was just like, well, what if? But they kept it consistent, man. It's
Hmm.
like, I just don't understand how people can just forget about some things and just say, like Solo. Solo was awful. But it's like, oh, we have Han Solo, so we can, and Chewbacca, so it's gonna be good. No,
Yeah.
it's not gonna be good.
Right. Yeah, we can definitely switch gears to Star Wars. I do want to ask you one question because I've seen this on the internet. Is the Snyder Cut a win for toxic fandom?
uh, Obviously.
You
I
think so?
mean, dude, I honestly think it was a nail in the coffin because if you think about it, man, as soon as I think it was Batman versus Superman that kind of kicked
Bat-
it off
so
because
Batman versus Superman was the first
I
one
mean,
where it was so
yeah,
that people were like, first, okay, Man of Steel was like, okay, right? You're kind of like, okay, I'm suspicious of where this is going because essentially Zod and Superman, he killed thousands of people in
yeah,
Metropolis. But like Batman, okay, we're like, all right, but Batman and Superman um, was like, you know what? We're doubling down on this shit. Batman kills people. He's a psychopath, and Superman
yeah.
isn't like it. Just I don't know. It was the first time, and I Warner Brothers clearly brought in Joss to go, dude. I think they heard it. They heard the reception, and they're like, bro, we've gotta lighten this up. You know what I mean? We gotta lighten this
And
up.
they were trying to do the Marvel thing. They were trying to add levity to already a dark universe that they'd
Yeah,
created.
and
There
then
was no going
And then
back.
Snyder's cut that all out.
Yeah, there was no going back, man. Like it was they got to a point of no return, and so when Suicide Squad came out, people gave that awful ratings and reviews, and the talk was just they were just getting worse and worse. And then I think after this the Whedon cut, it was just like this is and remember that kind of set up the Snyder cut to be like, oh, we're gonna just expect a massive just crap show. Like it was just gonna be awful.
Yeah, I thought this was. I
And
thought it was going to be a shit show, but it what you know, but it what it turned into more is like an oddity. It was like I'm going to watch this like the way I watch, like I go to Ripley's Believe It or Not because I can't believe this is a goddamn thing, right?
yeah, I think
You know what I
everybody
mean?
went into it like that. I
It's
think everybody was saying that.
yeah, like a curiosity. Like I don't know if this is, you know, at this point it doesn't matter if it's good because we've seen the movie. This is going to be just a different cut. And while it was vastly different and I think better, it also had the advantage of, being 2 hours longer. I mean, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And giving more time to other characters. I mean, of course it's going to be better, but it's still this curiosity. But it is like giving credence to people that were upset at how it all went down, right? And
But you
giving it to them.
do you think though? I mean, if you were to ask the same question yourself, was that the beginning to that whole toxic universe and toxic reviews and just everything about how that was when I think it was in my opinion, I think it was the nail in the coffin. But
What do you mean nail in the coffin?
I think that solidified DC as just they don't know what they're doing
Yeah.
at
Oh,
that point.
I think. Oh, then
And
it's the nail in the
and
coffin of his run. I would think 100%
yeah, but do you? I mean, okay, so
of his
just
influence, I should say.
yeah, but the I think the toxicity behind I think it all started at Batman versus Superman.
Yes. Yeah, I
Because
agree.
at that that's what I'm saying. I think it was just then you have Snyder cut, Whedon cut, or whatever, and then I think that was, in my opinion, I just think that solidified everything
Now, are you
about
talking about
you know
toxicity from the studio and how it is, or are you talking about from the fans?
both
Yeah, because
both.
it's
I mean, think about it.
100% both.
It was a massive tornado. I
That's
mean,
what.
everybody was tearing it apart. People
Yes.
were tearing each other apart within the studios.
Yes, the studio
Nobody
was
was on
so
board.
involved. It's. You know what somebody should do is like a documentary. Frankly, it would be fascinating, like how we
Yeah,
got to here. Like how it should just be called Justice League, the documentary. Like, I would be
yeah.
completely fascinated to watch something like that. Like
And it's like the Michael Jordan one, the dance is like
right.
how they got to be the best Bulls team, but then you have how this got to be the worst, run of DC movies ever.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I enjoyed the Joss Whedon Justice League. It is what it is. There's so many. There's, what's so funny is that I'm a as as you know, I'm a graphic designer, and one of the things that I've learned is that we do reviews with other creatives, right? And the best way, in my experience, to handle that is to go, if there's any, so here's my poster, here's my layout, here's this brochure, the whatever the rhetoric that's inside of it, the photos, the layout, anything gives you any dissonance, anything strikes you immediately, I need to know, because that's
Yeah.
usually a telltale sign that something's wrong. In my experience, anytime you try to explain that away and go, oh, well, what we're trying to do is, and if I got to explain it, you've done it wrong,
Yeah.
right? You need to reapproach it. So I don't know how he's watching this, right? And the studio gets to watch these cuts, but I don't know how he's the Joss Whedon, and he's like the Russian family type thing, and
Oh
I
yeah.
don't understand. He's like, man, this is a huge win for this movie to keep this in. I don't understand it. I don't understand how these things at this with that many professionals get by. Like you're watching the cut. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
obvious disharmony. And I'm gonna go straight into Star Wars. Uh, there's multiple instances of what I was just talking about in the last three movies that came out. Um,
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities in
there's a
that with
lot of
that
similarities in how it was. It had the toxic fans, Jesus, and I think Star Wars has way worse fans than DC Comics,
Oh yeah.
frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the same time, you can't help but at the end of it, you watch it and you're like, that's unfortunate because that was probably the most expensive, unfortunate thing I've ever seen. Three big Star Wars movies that were like they have you leaving their head, scratching their head. You know what I mean?
Mike, I have okay, so question.
Yes.
Okay. Let's assume in this universe that we live in that George Lucas never really sold his rights of Star Wars and decided that he was going to go ahead and do, the three films after,
Mm-hmm.
Return of the Jedi. Do you think after seeing episodes 1, 2 and 3, do you think that they would be as bad as 1, 2 or 3 or as bad as or better than 7, 8, 9?
I mean, I'll answer it, but like, there's no real answer because obviously this hypothetical. I think
Sure,
a lot of
sure.
the main problems with one, two, and three, which you watch them, is that it's so obvious that this dude fell in love with CG, right? And we're talking early 2000s CG. He fell in love with CG, and this dude's like, I'm
Yeah.
all in. And then even Ewan McGregor was like, it got to the point that like in the third movie, I was just in a green room by myself, and the performances
Yeah.
100% show that. You know what I mean? That's and
Yeah.
that's why it's so wooden. The script certainly didn't help. But I will tell you this: Episode one started with Anakin Skywalker, right, as this
Mhm.
precocious young, talented boy, that has this potential. It introduced the fact that he experiences fear of loss, and that
Mhm.
thread continued from one, two, and three. What I'm
Mhm.
trying to say is it had a planned story arc. Go to 7, 8, 9 and throw that fucking thing out the window, because what we saw was two directors fighting, and we're front row seats with
Yeah.
the privilege of paying tickets to watch these two directors fight on screen, which is it's sad, really, because I love Star Wars. It's sad. It was sad, and it was a
Well,
wasted opportunity.
it was for sure because I mean I really enjoyed J.J. Abrams, and I I think had he done all three of them,
Right.
I think they would have turned out differently.
Right.
Obviously, um, I also think that um, going back to that hypothetical, you're right. You have a consistency in an arc of a character, because really is, if you think about it, the origin story of how we got, to Darth Vader.
Right.
That's really, really what it was. And I just feel like what they did, and I think J.J. Abrams had an idea for it, and I something happened, man, and I wish I would have been like you know a fly on the wall just to kind of hear the conversations, because I honestly, man, like, slap Star Wars on the title of the film and let's see how it's being received. We'll see how it goes, because it was just I didn't know what to. I walked out of there like, what did I just watch?
Right.
Like, everything that happened in seven was erased almost,
Yes.
basically.
Yeah.
And and so that's why I'm kind of like, what happened? At what point did the executives in the room seeing this cut and saying, "This is great. We're gonna make money off of this," or like, what did I did? What did I watch? And that's the thing. It's like these executives are responsible for, number one, the creation of an ongoing story that is, just very well renowned, very well known and world renowned. And so why fuck it up?
Mm-hmm.
You know, why mess something like that up? Your responsibility is to make sure that the quality is there. And that's the part I just never understood about studios and the executives. Yes, dollar signs at the end. But answer me this. You have J.J. Abrams, and at what point do you say, okay, well, let's get Ryan Johnson, because, Ryan Johnson has some success,
Right.
some pretty decent films.
Looper, man.
Um,
I mean, one of the best
Looper
science
was
fiction
great.
movies you ever see, ever made.
Yeah, was it Brothers Grimm or something like that?
Right. Which is
I don't,
right, but that's a fun movie.
yeah, it was fun. And
Yeah.
then one of his very first films that I watched, because a friend of mine was his AD on this set, and she was just like, "It's a phenomenal film. You'll trip out." And it was called Brick. It was like one of his early films, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt is in it, and it was it was that film noir film
Mm-hmm.
movie story with the dialogue, but set in like a grungy LA, setting of, these adolescent kids. But it's very noir and it's very well told. And so I'm thinking, man, this guy, he's got something, man. He's gonna bring something to this movie. And it was a complete earth-shattering fail. It really was.
So I don't totally agree. I think there was a tonal shift. From what I understand, again, a documentary would be amazing on this whole thing because we want to know the
Right.
truth. But from what I understood is that like Abrams was like, yeah, this is the director, we're handing it off. He literally stopped one movie. Ray is doing this. The next movie starts. Johnson's now at the helm. Ray's doing this, right? And she found Luke at the end of Force Awakens, and you're like, all right, well, she's gonna get trained, and then it starts with like, I'm gonna deconstruct this whole thing. Listen, man, there's nothing wrong with that. The time to do this isn't in the middle of a trilogy, unfortunately. If you wanted to deconstruct the idea of Luke's failure, uh, I think that's fascinating, frankly. You know what I mean? I think that's a good idea. We need to move that into episode one and let Luke have a redemption arc. You know what I mean? Or let his new student uh, basically guide him to that redemption of confidence. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think the idea is, I think the idea of the fact that Luke, like this Jedi thing is stupid. I 100%, because you go back and you watch the prequels, and it's evident that this Jedi lifestyle and we're getting fanboy here. It's evident that this Jedi lifestyle is
Yeah.
set up to fail. It's it's no attachments in the realm of humanity, and I know they're aliens, but in Star Wars the aliens are depicted as like having human emotions, like and human nature. Like they have attachments. They are insecure, they're confident, they're cocky, power
Yeah.
hungry. Those are all human things that just happen to be in a Mon Calamari or you know what I mean, a Twi'lek or the race doesn't matter. That's just what they look like. That's just the way Star Wars operates. Uh, but the fact that like the Jedi were so arrogant and so adherent to the old ways that this is why the prequels are beautiful in a sense that you know what I mean. I know that they're not great, but there's a lot of awesome moments. I remember we were watching it with my young one, my Maya, who's 9. You know that that's for the audience, and my wife. And I'm like, Shannon, Maya, watch this scene. It's Mace Windu, and it's Yoda, and they're opposite the desk of Palpatine in Attack of the Clones, I think, or Revenge of
Mm-hmm.
the Sith. And I'm like, what is happening right here? The two greatest Jedi Masters are across the desk from the Lord of the Sith, and these jackasses have no idea, right?
Yeah.
It's a failure on their part completely. And I
Yeah.
think that
The arrogance.
this complete, yes. And I think that Ryan Johnson kind of like was like, I thought that was a fascinating approach. So okay,
Well,
well, hold on a second. Last Jedi happens now in the third movie in the finale. Abrams has a decision to make, and he's like, I'm gonna continue this, right, and we'll bring this to a close, or I've got to get it back on track. And I don't understand. You weigh the pros and cons. You got one movie. He chose to, I got to get this back on my track, right? Not on the path that was laid out from the second movie.
yeah, yeah.
I don't understand when you're weighing pros and cons how that one won because it is abrupt as shit. It's
Oh
like,
yeah.
okay, let's turn it. Kylo Ren, let's get him his mask back because we love that mask, even though he crushed his mask, which was supposed to represent, you know what I mean, like his evolution, like you know what I mean. He's the supreme leader.
Mm-hmm.
He's all in 100%. But now where it's like, okay, well, we got to get this kid on a redemption arc. You know what I mean? And guess what? So it's to make it to soften the blow to the redemption arc. Well, he's not the real big bad. It's Palpatine. He just came from nowhere, and thus, you know what I mean? Eliminating Anakin's sacrifice. I don't understand that decision making. That is the worst part of this entire series. He should have just gone with. He should have just brought it home and taking and used the momentum, even though he didn't agree with it, of Last Jedi and just and brought it home. Raise a nobody. That's fascinating too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you don't
Leave
have to be a
that. Yeah.
somebody. Yeah, leave it. But no, he's like, well, I got to answer. It's his retcon of a movie and using the runtime, bro, of the last movie in the trilogy, and he's using
Oh man.
runtime to retcon the previous movie. A lot of people don't like, people blame Ryan Johnson, and that's fine. I think the worst offender is J.J. Abrams' decision to use runtime at the end for a retconning. That's the worst part of this whole thing.
Yeah, I agree with you on the retcon part. I I just don't understand how when you're writing a script and you kind of just have to hit the reset button because it's your vision, right? Because that's I feel like Ryan Johnson did that with um uh
Last Jedi.
number yeah no well number he went from you see number 7 and then you do number 8 and you're just like I'm just gonna reset all the characters inconsistencies all over again. I felt like I don't know that there was this. I felt like after watching Return of the Jedi, I felt like there was this sense of hope
And closure, right?
and there
Yeah.
closure, but I also felt like there was going to be this lasting thing where things were going to get better, and the Jedi were going to, grow.
Flourish under Luke. Yes. Yes. 100%.
But 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 you get that from the character of who he is, and then you have this character in the Last Jedi that just like decides to throw everything away.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
That's the part that I was just like, I don't. That's not who he is. That
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was never written like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, anyways, and then just I felt like I was also being smashed in the face with a lot of you know, the hidden messages of social injustice and
So I'm not
women
going
and
to. I'm
I
not.
mean, it is what
hold
it
on.
is.
I'm not going to deny. And we're both like super progressive people. I'm not going to deny that being there. But the unfortunate part is that the uh, the toxic part of the fandom really latched on to that, and I think that's a
Yeah.
sad thing because I think diversity. I think that you know what I mean. I think these are all positive things.
Sure.
To be perfectly honest, like one of the best decisions that I thought for Star Wars is like after when the marketing and when the first movie was released, I'm like, hey man, we got a Star Wars whose main leads are a female Jedi and an African
Right.
American. You know what I mean? These are your two leads. I'm like, dude, that's
Yeah.
that's the bomb, right? And then the narrative went and did a disservice to them both. But you know what I mean? Yeah,
I just felt like it was heavy-handed is all. It's like you didn't have to include it. Like I think that in that universe,
we'd
I
move
don't
past
believe in
it.
that
Yeah,
universe. Yeah, it doesn't really our universe obviously,
sure.
reality that exists. You don't have to heavy-handed it,
I never thought about that. Yeah,
these social statuses and stuff like that, and I I just feel
right.
like
Yeah, I think
you
that
have this
yes.
thing and that was just forced down your throat a bit.
Well,
And it's
so
like,
here's
man,
the
I'm watching Star Wars.
I'm not going to say that that's not a valid argument. I think that most of that argument comes from the portrayal of Admiral Holdo. Um, Many of those arguments on that narrative are like, "Don't mansplain to me," right? Or,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But the main problem was that she was a terrible leader. One conversation with Poe about her plan would have saved an entire. You know what I mean? It's just that
Yeah.
she's,
Yeah.
you know, arrogant and a terrible leader, and people died. And Poe essentially created an unneeded mutiny because she's like, yeah, I don't have to tell you anything when you need to communicate because you're on the same damn team and he's one of your best. I get it. I yeah.
Mike, let me ask you a question, man. So, one of the things that we've kind of seen, in this progression of how Disney has just grown Star Wars to, you know, new things now, and they're going to continue to grow and stuff like that. How do you feel about, because you and I have talked about this, but how do you feel about taking what's in the universe, right? And just taking bits and pieces of it and just kind of recreating it, or not recreating but just starting from scratch, because a lot of people want the old stuff. They want to have the hero that they know in the movie somewhere. But why not have new beginnings in
Hmm.
the same universe? Like there's nothing wrong with that. I think you and I both agree that we loved, Knights of the Old Republic.
Yep.
One of the things about Knights of the Old Republic was that yes, it was in the universe, but there was nothing attached to
Right.
what we know of New Hope and Luke
Hmm.
Skywalker and all of that. Um, do you think the success of like Rogue One and stuff like that, but just building onto that and just hitting the reset button and starting from scratch, do you think that that's the future of what you see in Star Wars,
Un, un,
or for
yeah.
any fantasy genre?
Unfortunately, I don't. I think that for the fan service, okay. For instance, I had hopes that. So okay. So to clarify what you're saying is Star Wars is more than the Skywalker saga. It's more than the small world syndrome of let's have an appearance with Chewbacca. You know, it doesn't matter what the
Right.
story is, right? Uh, it's a small universe, but yet it's a large universe. I thought the Mandalorian was gonna be that way, right? And the Mandalorian's excellent. But then I was disappointed that they're like, oh, let's bring in some of the world at large. I mean, it's no spoiler. It's been, but with the ending with season two's introduction to Luke Skywalker, and I'm like, I was really hoping that we'd move past that.
Right.
I think they should move past it. And then we bring back Boba Fett. Again, fan service. There's nothing wrong with it. Dope as hell.
Sure.
Even Luke's appearance was dope as hell. And frankly, therapeutic because Favreau, Filoni, et al. Gave us the Luke that we have always wanted and
Right.
not the Luke that was given to us in the movies. So
Yeah.
so that was therapeutic. But I don't think they're going to escape the fandom. Like, I mean, all the things that they've already said is stuff that exists before. They need to do what we had talked about. We've talked about this since we were kids, but hey, give me a detective story
Oh
set
yeah.
on Nar Shaddaa, right? That has nothing to do with any Skywalker or any Jedi.
Right.
It's in the underground slums of the city, and it's this noir story, where somebody comes into your the office of a PI. I mean, I'm talking stereotype, right? A femme fatale walks into his right, and my husband's been kidnapped. You know what I mean? And it's the whole thing,
Yeah.
right? And he takes the job, but he's a drunk. You can set all of that in the world. And when Mandalorian was released, I'm like, this is a Western. Like, this is
Yeah, totally spaghetti western. Big
goddamn
time.
Western. Literally, Mando's first scene is the barn doors opening, and I think you either almost hear it in your head, but I think they actually added like spurs, ching, like when he walked in. I think that was done intentionally, and it's like, oh shit, this is a goddamn. We're like literally walked in a bar, like Clint Eastwood did. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah. Yeah.
and he even has kind of like his cape is almost a poncho too, with the way he wears it. Yeah, that's all
Yeah, it
intentional.
was kind of like that Clint Eastwood,
Yeah,
vibe in Good, Bad, and the Ugly.
right.
It's one of those, and immediately, even the music, I was like, oh
Oh,
my
the
gosh,
music
this
is
is gonna be
totally
like
like
a.
that. Is
I
total
was like,
Western.
this is gonna be a spaghetti western, like
Yeah.
the old Clint Eastwood movies, immediately, big time. And so, but that's what I'm talking about. But you still have the consistency of what Star Wars is,
Right.
right?
It's still the vision, the universe, the
Yeah, the feel for it, the whole everything, the tone,
right.
everything.
And then
Um,
we can't not touch on why we've talked about Kevin Feige being a showrunner, loving the characters, understanding who we want Steve Rogers to be when we meet him, and understand what Steve Rogers to be when we last see him. You know what I mean? Um, and okay, let's make sure that it gets from point A to point B. In The Mandalorian, you have Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. So Dave Filoni, longtime Star Wars showrunner of Clone Wars, Rebels, a lot of things that a lot of Star Wars fans really love. Almost like George Lucas, he worked with longtime collaborator with George Lucas's. A lot of people speculated that like he's gonna be the heir apparent before the Cell, right? Because he's the Star Wars Bible. I mean, Dave Filoni
Yeah.
is. So you have Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni playing with their favorite thing in the world, and it shows. Point being is that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau didn't try to deconstruct anything and put their spin on something.
yeah,
They know what I
yeah.
like, they know what you like because they like it too, and then I have this avenue to give you something that meets your expectations. What is so goddamn hard about that? I really don't know. It never fucking works out, man. when you try to put your spin on something. I don't
Yeah.
understand it.
Yeah. So if you want to do that, just make your own
Make
movie.
your own
Don't
movie.
yeah.
Don't use this
Yeah. Start.
IP. And don't waste the
Yeah.
opportunity. We only get
Right.
so many Batman and Superman movies,
Oh my gosh.
and
Yeah,
they're
man.
wasted opportunities if they don't hit the mark, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Um, so I have a question for you
You
since
ask your
you
question.
because you know, when you do, tabletop and you write these things out,
Right, like when I Dungeon Master.
um, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so I guess part of it is like, and that's one of the things that I've always enjoyed about who you are is because you love story.
Mm-hmm.
You know how to write it out. You know what to look for. You know the basic, stages of a story arc, and so I think for you when you approach it, especially if it's going to be, you know, drawn out over several games, like what are you looking for that that the people that are going to be playing are going to love, that
Well,
they're going to really really
yeah,
enjoy, you know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
The secret to the success. So I've Dungeon Mastered way more than I played. Um, is stealing stuff like from video games, pop culture.
Sure.
Yeah, I steal liberally. These are things that I loved. I saw in Mass Effect. This will be cool. I'm going to incorporate this. Mass Effect's excellent. These are something I saw from Star Wars or something I saw from Lord of the Rings. Um,
Yeah.
um, Inspiration. One of my favorite ones. So what I do to answer your question is I come up with the. It's called you don't write the plot for the characters when you play D&D. At some point you hand it off to them and they're going to go where they want. They take it to where they want. But you write what's called the hook. This is what's going to get them involved. Why are you here and why do you need to
Mm-hmm.
go out and stuff to happen? So just to give you a specific example is I was I wrote a plot um, that was take place in this world called Eberron, which is a published world. I didn't make this up. You can buy the book, and it tells you everything about the world. And basically, instead of fantasy like Lord of the Rings type style goblins and orcs and wizards and
Yeah.
clerics and that type of fantasy, high fantasy. This was more like magic meets um, Harrison Ford and the Replicants. What was that movie? Blade Runner.
Oh yeah, Blade Runner.
So this movie was like a Blade Runner. It was very urban, and instead of like magic was used to infuse things for quality of life. So you would have elevators, but those elevators didn't run on electricity; they run on charged runes. You had
Mm,
signs. It was very ostentatious ads. Triple X. This is the world, but it
yeah.
was all magics. People people wearing urban clothes, walking down the street shopping, orc, elf, humans. You know what I mean? So it was a really cool
Yeah.
world. Anyways, so the world had a very a caste system, right? Again, not my world because I read the book and I was like,
Yeah.
you guys are playing in this world. And so I write a hook, right? And basically, the hook was that, okay, so I tell the players, hey, here's why you're here. You guys have all been recruited as part of this local militia. Two of you are like lords of really important houses, right? And we worked that out before. I was like, who wants to be, it's important to the story. I need two people to be nobles.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, I'll do it. And other guys, I'll do it. Okay, so that's your background of your character. You're part of the noble house. Anyway, so you work with this noble house, and you're gonna go and you know put down this revolt or whatever that's happening in town. You will be. Anyways, I was like, so this is like a joint operation. It's your noble house, right? That these two people are associated with, and you're gonna be. You guys, your crew, you lead this motley band of your characters, right? And you're going to be under the watch of another house, which is a very prominent house, right? They're going to watch you guys to see like, okay, these guys are good, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're watching you. Anyways, you go and you suppress these bandits, and the hook here is that to go and suppress the bandits. What I've written for the players is
Hmm.
I could talk about this shit all day. Is that they fight off the bandits and the bandits retreat into a hospice, Okay. Um, and you've won the day, and the players then basically like a training mode. You ever seen Judge Dredd
Oh yeah.
with Carl Urban? Epic. It was like that. Basically, the other noble lords were Dredd, and you guys were the applicant, the potential applicant, and they were evaluating you. Anyways,
Gotcha.
so mission complete. We've suppressed it, and they've retreated into the hospice, and they're hiding. What do you want us to do? Well, the other noble house is like burn it down, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the party, being good guys, are like, no, we're not going to do that. And they're like, fine. They burn it down. Blame you. Go. Look
Yeah.
what this house has done, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, this was a plot of this house to
Yeah.
suppress your
You're
house.
building tension.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then go. And then we had about a campaign, 6, 7 sessions, so on and so forth.
Okay.
Clear your name. That's what's called a hook, and then a plot. So I only write that little part, and then I,
Yeah,
and
but
then
that
I,
little part has a lot of detail in it, man. I
yeah,
mean, yeah, you're taking from other stuff,
yeah.
whatever, but I think anybody takes from
I
other. I
can't
mean,
remember where I took the like burn it down type thing. I stole that from. Oh yeah,
okay.
Patriot.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
Patriot.
And yeah, I mean, I think it's a normal thing, tastefully, taking things from,
Right. One
from
of my
other
characters
from other
wasn't named
media.
Mel Gibson. It was it a straight
Yeah.
like for like.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
No, tastefully, and someone that does that very well. Tarantino, one of my favorite film directors, he does that very well. He takes bits and pieces from so many different old films and magazines and all kinds of stuff, and so um, he's just inspired by all that kind of art. And you see it just little bits and pieces, but it's very tasteful.
Right.
And I think if you do that tastefully, I mean, you're creating it. You're kind of you have your own palette
Right. Yeah.
and it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's
an
good, man.
homage,
And so
but or inspiration.
yeah, yeah, and I think it's good, man. I think uh, I think where I was going with that is basically, with Star Wars, I feel like there's an opportunity here, in this new universe,
Right.
with Disney Plus and coming up with these, like Bad Batch. I think
Yes.
that's very, very, very creative. I think those are things that you don't have to stick to the old. Do something new, try something new. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think also you're seeing Marvel do that, too. They're moving
Yes.
on.
They are moving on to their
Because they
credit.
could, dude, they could sit on Captain America for years if they wanted to, but would they want to?
No,
Really?
yeah,
No.
you have to
I think
retire
it's
him and
time to
bring in new
move on.
people. Now, I understand what you're saying. It was 100%. I do think Star Wars is stuck in between giving us what we want. I guess they don't understand the difference. Maybe I don't know. It's hard to argue with that they're doing it right, but it's like I'm excited for Obi-Wan with the return of Ewan McGregor. I'm excited for more Mandalorian. I'm excited for the Ahsoka series, and I'm excited for the the Book of Boba Fett. But all of those
Right.
things, bro, we've already been there. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
they don't want to like, yeah, they're gonna give us what we want, but like even Bad Batch is like from the Clone Wars. You know what I
Right.
mean? Um, they're afraid to like venture out. Now they had announced the Star Wars, the Rangers of the New Republic.
Oh
That would
yeah.
have been cool, right? Like I want stuff like that. I don't need to circle back on stuff that we've seen either in the original trilogy or stuff that we've seen again. I know that you can give new stories or more insight as to what happened, and that's great. That's awesome. We're all lucky to see that. But bro, you've got opportunities to use the universe and use the world building that's been done to give us new stories. I think we'll get there, but I feel like they're afraid to get. I shit you not. There's going to be like a Chewbacca series, or you know what I mean, a
Yeah.
Salacious Crumb
Uh,
series, who is the little monkey lizard with Java. It's
oh
just
my.
not going to
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
It's not going to end.
Yeah. No, man, and I think overall, just seeing we're all gonna have our opinions and stuff, and we're I'm always one of those guys that's gonna enjoy the movie either way and kind of feel differently about it later. Like I a lot of times I just want to see people be, forcing uh, thinking outside the box. You
Hmm.
know, thinking of something different. Yeah, be inspired, use old content, but be different. Try something different. I think everybody's trying to do something like that. And I think that's why people have a hard time, like Christopher Nolan, his latest film Tenet, people it was a tough watch because I think there's a lot of creativity in it, and I think he he wanted to tell a story, but I think it would just got too convoluted um in the I guess it got convoluted in how he was supposed to somehow do this world where things were going forward and backward, and it
Did
got too complicated because I got lost, man. I got lost like
Yeah,
3 or 4 times,
he's out.
you
He's
know.
Chris Nolan himself almost, right?
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
gone
I
full
enjoyed
circle.
it. I enjoyed it, but it was still kind of like, whoa,
Did he do
that was
Interstellar?
he did, and it
Okay.
was
See, you see what
one
I
of my
mean?
favorite
He's
films.
getting.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
it's hard
Inception.
to. It's
He
hard to.
incepted himself.
Yeah, it's hard to argue. He certainly has his way of doing things, and it's I do complain though that he started this all like that
But
gritty realism.
but you have to you can appreciate the fact that he's trying to do something different. He's trying to
Yeah,
do something, and as far as storytelling, he's trying to do it differently. Because everybody's just reusing something that's been done and doing it over again. Um, you know when oh, one went out. When he did uh, when he did Insomnia, it was a remake. Insomnia was a remake, believe it or not. Um, and it was like a Norwegian film or
hmm
something like that. But he obviously, I mean, Robin Williams is amazing.
right. That's an Al Pacino, right?
Oh my gosh, man. But yeah, man, I just think that that's my thing.
Yeah,
If I were to just wrap it up in a bow, I just think that if they're gonna go forward, just do something different, try
right.
something different, you know, do things differently, try it out, and see what catches.
Right. I think
Um,
they need a Rangers of the New Republic in the mix of revisiting things that we love, because you're right, they
hmm
need to put their foot in the deep end, um, just like Marvel did with Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, when they released the slate of films, I remember when they were like, "Here, Phase 2 or Phase whatever Guardians was in." Everybody's like, "Guardians of the Galaxy." Listen, I'm not a big comic guy, but I'm tapped into the world.
yeah,
A lot of people are like, the hell, right? It's a random, and that was the litmus test. If they can pull off a little known property like Guardians of the Galaxy, they
and
can
they
do
did.
anything, and they crushed it.
Yeah,
You know
they
what I
knocked it
mean?
out of the
They
park.
absolutely
Yeah.
crushed it. So, Star Wars, do the same thing, you know, um, and yeah, do something different
Yeah.
and do a litmus test.
I mean, they have the right people in place for it, man. That's for
Well, the
sure. And
TV
they have
division is
this
run
this
by
platform,
Favreau.
man.
But they're
Dude,
still
yeah.
doing the Catherine Bigelow Rogue Squadron movie, and they're still doing the Taika Waititi Star Wars movie, which are
Mm.
helmed
Well,
by Kathleen Kennedy, who it's unfortunate that she, again, the whole new trilogy is unfortunate because it happened under her watch, but she is Hollywood royalty. I mean, talk about
yeah.
longtime collaborator with the great Steven Spielberg. I mean, you go back and watch Indiana Jones, Steven Spielberg classics, and watch the credits, and her name is in there. So
I mean, she's probably gonna. They're not. She's not going to go anywhere.
yeah, that,
But she's got. I mean, the thing is, Taika Waititi's an amazing director.
mhm.
So he's a great storyteller too. He sees things so differently more than other people. So I mean, I think for him, I mean, he can write his own check.
Yeah, he can, and he's proved it. All right, brother. Well, we are at almost an hour and 30 minutes, and
Oh wow,
yeah, if we could
be
do, I
like
could do
that.
this all day, dude. Thank you so much for taking the time. So for my group of gaming people, well, I'll do see what we can do. I'll get you one of our shirts. So the way it works is, it's. I mean, we don't take it too seriously, but you play somebody in Red Star, right? And all you gotta do is play somebody, and then you get a free Red Star Gaming shirt. I got hats and stuff like that. But
Well,
the group
dude,
of guys are
if
all over town. They're the coolest people. Do a lot of charity events and stuff like that. So I know that
well,
you,
just know, man.
yeah, don't know a lot about me in this world, my tabletop gaming world. They're a bunch of cool guys, man, cool guys and
Well,
girls.
I mean, just know. I mean, I'm not. I think tabletop gaming is super fun. I've only played it, 2 or 3 times in my life, and I loved it because of the story
Right.
aspect to it. And you and I always talk about that and how much I like Warhammer and stuff like that. But I'll tell you what, man. If you guys ever, I don't know if you guys ever need video work or whatever,
Right.
just let me know. I'd love to help you guys out, man, in any way. So,
All right, bro.
however I can help.
We the amateur hour, just webcam and with what is it, gumption and positive attitude when we do video stuff. It's pretty much how we do it. But brother, I love you, man. Thank you
Thank you,
so
man.
much.
Yeah, I
All
love
right,
you too, man. Thank you so much, dude.
all right, bro. Peace.
Yep.